Hi, my name is Ryan with Yushu, and I have finally broken in my pair of Russell Moccasin Backcountry boots in their walnut timberjack leather. I almost didn't make this video, but I'll tell you why. Thank you so much for watching. Please enjoy the video. So why did I almost not make this video? Well, it comes down to all the amazing content there already is about this boot. I'm talking about Tech from Bootosophy, Nick English from Stridewise, Weston from Rose Anvil, the owners of this company itself. I mean, they have so many good reviews out there on YouTube. I thought I can't really offer anything to this boot, but I thought about it and there is something I haven't heard about it that I will offer, and I'll give you that in my wrap up of the boot. But what is going to be discussed in this video? Well, we're going to do a deep dive into the QC of the boot. We'll talk a little bit about how it's made and what to expect from the QC, especially after the new ownership has moved in and is fully operating. We'll then dive into the leather of this boot. It's a really unique leather, and I think it's the perfect leather for this type of boot. So we'll kind of look at the characteristics of this. We'll of course do sizing on this boot. Now, I've already broken this boot in, but I will switch up the camera. We'll look at it on feet. I'll try them on. I'll go over sizing. I'll go over my sizing. We'll do the regular rigmarole, and we'll show you how it really fits on my feet. Maybe that will help you with your sizing. We'll go over the lacing, why that is unique, the comfort, why that is unique, and then I'm introducing something new to the Yushu community, and that is a wife score. So basically, I've asked my wife to rank all of my boots or score them 1 to 10, and I'm going to give you what she thinks about this boot. And just as a baseline, my wife views a 10 to be only the Alden Indy. Yeah, that's her favorite boot. She loves that boot. But a 1 is the Thursday Brawler boot. So now you know what my wife thinks. What do you think she thinks this is on a 1 to 10 scale? And then, of course, we'll do the wrap up and talk about what I think I can add to this discussion of the Russell Moccasin Backcountry boot. But first things first, let's turn that camera around like we always do and take a deep dive into the quality control. Likely if you clicked on this review, you already know a little bit about Russell Moccasin, but I'll just give you the abridged version. They've basically been around for over 124 years, and they're a boot that's handmade in the USA, in particular Belgian, Wisconsin. So that is a north, like I think it's about the center of the state in Wisconsin. And this is probably the most handmade boot that you can find right now, done by a large scale company or a semi-large scale company and not just an individual boot maker. This boot is their backcountry boot, and I did change out the laces. I just wanted some laces that would pop a little bit more. And right now, this boot currently goes for $750. So this is not an inexpensive boot, but I'll kind of let you know at the end if I think it's worth that crazy price tag. And I do want to just comment a little bit about how the boot's made. Just imagine that this might be your first video about this brand. Again, if it is, pause this and go see Tech from Bootosophy's videos. I think he does a better job in explaining everything I'm about to tell you, and Stridewise, and of course Rose Anvil, because he cuts this boot in half. But instead of normal boots that they take the leather and they wrap it from the top down, this is a true moccasin style. So the leather goes from the bottom up, and then it's sewn here to this plug they call in the moccasin world. And this is true moccasin construction. This is very rare. Most companies have gone away from this style, but this style takes an incredible amount of handwork and an incredible amount of skill to build. So these are skilled artisans who build this type of shoe, and it really shows. And you really need to know that before you look at the QC, because this is not a boot that is mass produced in China, and so you should not expect it to look like a boot that is mass produced in China. So that's just my quick 2 cents about how the boot is made. And this is a boot that came after the new ownership. And I do think they kind of cleaned up the QC with the new ownership. I did watch videos in years past about Russell moccasins, and there was some questionable QC, especially with this stitch that stitches the midsole or I guess the rubber slip sole to the midsole. But on my pair, it's flawless. It looks perfect on both of them. The stitch is great. It's a high SPI, or stitch per inch, and it's just really nice. Now the uppers here are sewn with the machine, but the plug to the moccasin vamp is actually hand stitched. And I just want to jump into that for a second, because if you look at this boot initially, you may think it's a little bit funny looking because of how it's stitched. It's not uniform here. Now, this is because I believe when they are lasting this boot, they have to nail this lower part of the vamp to the last. and then they put the plug in. Now Russell Moccasin has this famous overseam that they stitch to, so that's something unique to them in the moccasin world. But now the shoemaker has to stitch the vamp, but he's also trying to hit the holes where he did put the nails in the last. So that's why it's not perfect. And what I've heard with hand-lasted moccasins is you can actually tell who the maker of this boot was by how the stitches are. So, you have a high stitch per inch here, then as you go around, it opens up, and that, I believe, is necessary for this type of construction to make it fit around the last properly. So yeah, it doesn't look perfect, but it is perfect for what it is. At least that's in my opinion. And I'm kind of smitten with these boots. These boots are awesome. I really do love them. So everything about that you just need to take into consideration. The other thing is these are a double vamped boot. So there's an inner sock liner vamp inside this boot to make it waterproof. Well, you can see it. You can see the stitch here of that inner vamp. So it creates a little bit of a ridge, and that's so the stitching of the inner vamp isn't with the stitching of the mock, and so that makes it more waterproof. They don't put the inner vamp stitches over the moccasin stitches because that would kind of be counterintuitive to making it waterproof. So you can see that's why they do that. So these are the little things you'll start to see as you break them in, and it's all part of the design. It's all necessary for the boot to be good. Then you don't have stitching through the sole. That's because that just slipped. This is a full piece of veg tan here as your midsole. Then you have your slip sole, which that's sewn to. So these are pretty easy to resole. You can just have a cobbler peel these off and they can put on a new one. But that's going to take a while, especially if you're using this to do some hiking. I think that Vibram sole is going to be really sufficient for many years. Going on to the counter, it has a really beefy counter that is nice. It's beefier than I thought it was going to be. My first pair of real moccasins was Rancourt and Company's moccasins, and they have a tiny little heel counter, and I really like the heel counter of the Russell moccasins quite a bit better, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the fit of the video, the sizing and try-on part. And then you have the leather that it is made on. So I really think this is perfect leather for this application. And let me tell you why. So this leather is tanned by SB Foote, who Red Wing owns, right? So, and it's a leather that is enriched with a lot of oils and fats and waxes, much like a Chrome Excel leather. But the difference with this leather is there is no top coat to give it a sheen like Chrome Excel. So these boots are naturally more flat. They're a flat finish, which I think is perfect for a hiking boot, and it makes it a little bit more scratch resistant than Chrome Excel. Chrome Excel, because you can kind of buff it up to a nice sheen, you can easily scratch that sheen, while you can easily get that scratch out with Chrome Excel. With this Timberjack leather from SB Foote, it just seems like it's a little bit more scratch resistant, and that's perfect for what these boots are made for. They're not serious hikers. They're not serious work boots. These are boots that are good to kind of trudge in the water, kind of grassy plains, moderate hikes, just something like that. At least that's what I'm kind of coming up with off the top of my head. Of course, I never plan this stuff. I just kind of roll with it. So I think the leather is super soft and pliable like Chrome Excel, and that, along with the moccasin style construction, the style where that upper vamp is actually wrapped underneath your toe and it creates like a little sock, it makes it unbelievably comfortable. This is by far the most comfortable pair of boots that I've ever owned. And again, I'll talk about that more in the try on section, but it's like a leather sock. The Rancourt and Company moccasins I had was like a leather cotton sock, you could say, and this is like a leather wool sock. It's just a beefy leather sock that I have. It's the only boot that after a long day of walking, I felt like I didn't even want to take them off when the day was over. So that is my kind of breakdown of the quality control, the leather, the comfort, and how I'm feeling about the boot. Now let's try them on and go over sizing. Even though these are fully broken in, I just find it easier to try them on and explain what I'm feeling with sizing. Helps me remember things I wanted to bring out about the sizing of these boots. So that's what I'll do. And yes, I have white socks, but they're Carhartts, and I will be judged by someone in the comments because of my white socks. I know that's a very geriatric millennial thing to have, but I'm a geriatric millennial, so I don't wear them when you can see them, but you still will have something to say about these socks. So first of all, these laces that I have are super long, so I go around the back. I'll tie them up. I haven't used these laces that much. I actually use the regular laces that they came with more so when I broke in these boots. And that's the first thing I do want to talk about when it comes to the sizing is how these laces are laid out. So basically these three are spaced out farther and these three are tighter together. So that just helps you when lacing up to just get it a little bit more locked in to your foot. So right now it feels everything from here back feels locked in. So the heel is locked in. It feels like a C width heel to my mind. I'm a 12.5D on the Brannock, and I'm kind of changing my sizing recommendation. I was in Allen Edmonds recently. They sized me again. I've always said 13D, but that's not the case. It's more like a 12.5D. I'm between those sizes, so I think I'm going to go by 12.5D for from here on out. And I got these in a 12, and they're perfect. But another thing that's kind of cool about them is how it's based on like a Munson last, like so similar to the Iron Ranger. So it's a pretty wide last, but because of that mock toe stitching, how they do that, it doesn't look so wide. So it's a roomy and wide last with a lot of room in your toes, but because of how they shape that mock toe stitch, it just doesn't feel like a super bulbous toe like the Iron Ranger. I don't need the pull tabs with these boots, but I can't convince myself to remove them. I'm not a big pull tab person, but you know, most people probably would like to have the pull tabs with their boots. So it's just unbelievably comfortable. You feel it coming underneath your feet, especially here. I mean, at your toes, maybe a little bit here, but that wrap around feeling, it's like a leather wool sock. Again, it just feels supportive and comfortable at the same time, and it's just unreal. These are by far the most comfortable boots I've ever owned. So before I had these Russells, the True Balance Last from Alden, I believed was the most comfortable boot that I've ever owned, and I've owned several pairs, but now it has been dethroned with these Russell Moccasin Backcountry boots, and they look amazing. So when I stand up, you can see how it kind of locks in this part, and you can adjust how you're going to tie them because of that spacing, and you can get them just perfect. So they feel amazing. They feel like you can wear them for 2 days straight if you had to. You can hike the Appalachian Trail, and these boots would last the whole time. So just amazing boots, amazing comfort. I size a half down from Brannock, and they feel great, but they do have sizing on their website. They have a cool sizing tool that utilizes a credit card to get the right sizing. I just kind of went with what Tech said from Bootosophy, and it worked out great. So let me tell you what I think is so special about these boots and what I think I have to say about them that might differ from what the others have. So what's my opinion of this boot? Well, I love it. It's a 10 out of 10. Just an amazing boot. It is expensive. It is expensive. But let me now tell you what I think I might bring to the table with reviewing this boot. And I was trying to think about how I could explain the heritage factor of this boot, explain the comfort level of this boot in a way that would make sense to most people. And this is how I would do it. Basically, this is the first time reviewing boots, and I've had boots that are quite a bit more expensive than this, and at least dress shoes that are more expensive than this also. And this is the first time while I was wearing a boot, while I was using the boot, I kind of reflected on something. I don't have any kids, but I do have two nephews. One is 3 months old and one's older. And basically, if one of those kids needs a size 12 or could fit in the size 12 of these boots, they're going to get these boots. This will be something that I will to them. This to me feels more like a fine watch. Now, they might not ever understand the value of it, but to me, this is something that I think you will be passing down to the next generation. And that's why I think it is absolutely worth that high price. This boot is so unbelievably comfortable, so well made, handmade in the USA. It feels like it will be around for a long time if it's taken care of, and it will be willed to the next generation. This boot is a bargain. That's controversial, but that's how I feel. It's an amazing boot. that will only get better with time. And in my rotation, it will last a long time. So now we're coming to a new part of my boot reviews, and that's the wife score. So I wanted to do a little bit of a score that kind of represents the everyday woman because 98 or 99% of you, and my wife watches the videos, so she might be the only woman who watches these videos, are men, right? 99% are men. And you get your perspective through the comments below, but you don't really get a woman's perspective on these boots. And it's not like we need that, but it's kind of nice to have it sometimes. So I've asked my wife to go through all my boots and give them a ranking from 1 to 10, 1 being the worst and 10 being the best. Now, the 1 in my boot collection was the Thursday Boot Company Brawler boot. She had nothing good to say about that boot, just wasn't her style. But a 10 in my collection are my Alden indie boots. No matter what makeup of leather they are, she thinks that is the nicest boot that you can have. And my wife doesn't know about boots. She doesn't know how much they cost. That's between me and you. She just looks at them for how nice they are, how nice they look. So, what does my wife think of the Russell Moccasin Backcountry boot? Well, shockingly, she gave this boot an 8.5, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe she liked them that much. But in her mind, it's a rugged boot that is sleek because of the mock toe, and then it just looks like it's high quality because of leather. So that's what she said, 8.5. That kind of blew my mind that she liked them that much. And that makes it easier for me to convince her that I need more. See? This is how we do things around here. No, just kidding. She's actually an accountant, so she knows exactly how much each one of these boots costs. But that's my take on the boot. I think they're amazing boots. I think if you can swing it financially, this is an awesome boot to have, especially if you're going to be using it for hiking. But if you have any questions about the boot, how it's built, have any questions about my particular boots, just let me know in the comments below.